trying to give a partner space, the question that I see over and over again is, how long before I reach out? Getting the communication right is absolutely crucial to relationship repair. So in today's video, I'm going to break down the 5 metrics that you need to know when you should reach out to an ex or a partner that you're currently separated from. So whether you're going through a separation, whether you're going through a breakup, or even a rough patch in a relationship, knowing when to reach out is one of the questions that I see the most in my comments. And for good reason. Communication is absolutely crucial to relationship repair. The problem is that some people can throw around like arbitrary timeframes. There's like a 30-day no contact rule or a 15-day cool-off period, whatever it is. So straight off the bat, the first thing that I would say is forget the standard 30-day no contact rule. Counting down random calendar days is a losing strategy. If you reach out to a partner or an ex-partner based on a clock rather than readiness, then you're going to crash and burn the connection permanently. And you're going to really damage any chance of reconciliation. So 30 days, 15 days, time is a terrible metric to consider when to reach out to an ex-partner or reach out to a current partner. If you think about it this way, if I said to you, how long does it take to get from, I live in Houston. Let's say, how long does it take to get from Houston to Austin? The reasonable driving time is around 3.5 hours. The problem is that if you walk there, then it's not going to take you 3.5 hours. It's going to take you a lot longer. If you cycle there, it's going to take you a lot longer. But even the vehicle you're driving will have a massive impact on whether it takes 3.5 hours, whether it takes 3 hours, whether there's traffic on the road, etc. So time as a unit, when considering whether to reach out to a partner, or whether to start conversations with a partner or ex-partner, is a really terrible metric to think about. So when I see people in my comments saying, how long before I reach out? It's kind of like that old phrase, how long is a piece of string? I can't give you a time because no one can give you a time because it's not based on time. So I want to give you the metrics for you to consider whether you should start conversations or not. So these are the 5 main metrics, and stick around for all of them because they're all really, really important, and understanding how they all join together is going to be really helpful for you. So the first one is accountability. The second one is permanence. The third one is intent. The fourth one is detachment. And the fifth one is your nervous system. So the first metric is accountability. Now, if you're a regular follower of my channel, you probably know this one off by heart because I talk about it a lot. But essentially the foundational mistake that people make is rewriting history to blame the breakup entirely on your partner or your ex-partner, writing them off, painting yourself as a victim. The problem is when it comes to tough times in a relationship or whether your partner needs space, if you view yourself as a completely innocent victim in the relationship dynamic, then you end up becoming completely blind to the behavioral loops that destroyed the relationship in the first place. So the very first metric to look at is looking at your toxic patterns. Now, toxic is a pretty heavy word. A lot of people are like, well, I'm not toxic. No one wants to be toxic. But just because you have toxic behaviors does not mean that you are a toxic person. But everyone in some way has performed some sort of toxic behavior, whether they've raised their voice, whether they've shut down and not said anything, that's a toxic behavior. Whether you've completely deflected a question, there's a lot of different toxic behaviors that a lot of us don't realize we're doing. So being able to explicitly map out yourself the exact behavioral feedback loop that led to the collapse of the relationship is really important. And this all starts with identifying your exact contributions. Whether it was shouting at someone because you felt anxious, whether it was avoiding conflict, whether it was stonewalling, whether it was refusing to bring up important conversations, it's important to take a look at ourselves. So here, the action to take is to stop focusing on what they did wrong and start to write down the exact trigger that made you react poorly during fights, as an example, and start to implement new regulated responses in your everyday interactions with your friends, your family, your coworkers. It's important to look at the accountability metric first to be able to start asking yourself, what are the things that I contributed to the relationship collapse? And have I actually taken action on them? Now, this part can kind of suck sometimes. I see it as a really good thing. Accountability, self-accountability is really powerful because it means you achieve a lot more. You actually end up growing a lot. And it means that your locus of control in life, your ability to have an impact on your life becomes a lot greater. It becomes a lot more internal, and it means you end up achieving a lot more than other people. So self-accountability is massive. So this is a metric, asking yourself, how accountable am I holding myself for all of these things in a relationship? The reason for this metric is to prevent structural failure of the relationship. If you haven't changed the underlying internal machinery of how you handle stress in a relationship, reaching out to your partner who maybe has asked for space or maybe has broken up with you, or maybe just is asking for some distance right now, is going to be completely pointless. Without meeting this metric, any second chance is simply going to be a repeat of the exact same cycle. And this leads to an even faster, more painful second breakup. The last thing that we want is for you to reconcile with your partner, and 2 weeks later, you're in another breakup cycle again, but it feels worse this time, and you're damaging any chances that you have. So accountability as a metric is a really, really important thing to track and ask yourself the important questions. But that's not the only metric to look at. The next metric is kind of even more important than the first one. The second metric is the permanence metric. So the core of this is ultimately whether this change, this growth, and this accountability actually has any legs to it. Is this actually long-term? Anyone can verbally take accountability for a little bit. It's super easy, especially when there's really high stakes. So here, the action that we need to take is to make sure that we are anchoring our growth, our self-accountability, and our changes in self-sustainability. So shifting our growth transformation away from some sort of external marketing campaign. So just saying something to get an X back, just saying something, just performing online, posting social media posts in a way that it's going to try to get your ex's attention or your partner's attention or intrude in your partner's space, shifting away from that marketing campaign to the internal identity-based change that's really important. So it's important here to stop posting glow-up content on social media or deeper meaningful quotes in order to, on Instagram stories to try to get your partner's attention, hoping that they take a look at it. Instead, building yourself a lifestyle of discipline that you will maintain, even if your partner or your ex-partner never speaks to you again, making sure that you're anchoring your growth in yourself rather than doing it performatively just to get your ex back, making sure that this growth is permanent. The reason behind this is there is a fragility to fakery. So performative growth is a house of cards. The second that your partner, your ex-partner, maybe gives you a tough truth or rejects you or says, no, I don't want to get back together, or ignores your message, that growth collapses completely. And this sends you spiraling back to square one. So identity-based growth is permanent because it belongs to you, not to your partner's reaction. And counterintuitively, this type of growth, this permanent growth, is the thing that actually reattracts a partner back to the relationship because they can see and feel inspired that you are continuing to grow regardless of their current feelings right now. And this can be hard to wrap your mind around sometimes because there's nothing wrong with wanting to repair your relationship. There's nothing wrong with wanting to speak with your partner or to cultivate that relationship. The problem is that if you only decide to change because you want that outcome, it means that that change is not going to continue because once they come back, that's it. You have your outcome and you have no need to grow anymore. And that is not attractive. So it's really important to piece these two together. And this is where I see so many people stumble. When I speak with people who are wanting to join and, I ask them a lot of questions to sort of get to know where their head's at. And, oftentimes I ask them, if your partner were never to come back, would you still want to do this? Would you still want to work on yourself and make these changes? And it's a difficult question. But if the answer is no, then it's not going to stick and you're not going to get the changes that you want because you're only going to be tied to their response. And this is one of the biggest shames that I see is when people don't invest in themselves because it's important. They only invest in themselves in order to get one single outcome. But that leads me on to my next metric, which is the intent metric. So oftentimes people make the mistake of treating their partner or their ex-partner like an emotional vending machine, wanting to reach out to talk to them, to check in, but subconsciously they're doing it because they feel lonely, because they feel desperate for validation, or they're hunting for reassurance that they still miss you. So it's important to audit your intent. This is a really important metric to decide whether you are reaching out for the right reasons or if you need to continue shifting your growth. So it's important to, before you send a single text message, before you dial a number, analyze whether you are reaching out to give value or to take value. Now, this may sound a bit harsh, but if you think about it, if your partner needs some space, your partner wants time away from the relationship, there's a reason for it. Right now, if they are not wanting to talk with you, it's because they don't see that this conversation is going to give them value. So if you're only reaching out to get validation, to get reassurance, or to find out if they still want to be with you, then what you're asking for is you're asking to take more value from that conversation that they're going to receive, which is only going to reinforce their idea of not wanting to be part of the relationship. This is the difference between high value communication and low value communication. If you're not providing value within the conversation, then it's going to backfire. So this is something to ask yourself, is what is my intent in reaching out? So it's important, like we speak about on this channel, to stop sending low value, open-ended text messages, just like the, hey, just thinking about you, hope you're okay. This is very low value. It doesn't provide any real value. But instead, swapping it for reaching out of a known connection point between you and your partner, something that provides value on an emotional level. Now, I can't dig into it here. I've done multiple videos on the difference between high and low value communication. And this is what I work on with members as well, is understanding the difference between what is valuable conversation for your partner and for the relationship versus what is not. What is going to be high value communication tools versus what are low value communication tools. It's really important to understand the difference between them here. So your intent is going to have a massive impact on that. And if you do want to start your journey on learning this and learning the tools in order to repair a relationship, then join my relationship bootcamp. This is where all of my members start, where they start learning the fundamentals of relationship repair and how to repair your relationship from the ground up. So if you do want to work with me, join the relationship bootcamp and we can talk from there. So this is really important. There is a sense of desperation. Human beings can instantly sense when someone is trying to extract emotional security from them. So reaching out from a place of depletion, if you are feeling needy, if you're desperate to try and get some breadcrumb of validation from your partner, this is going to drive your partner or your ex-partner further away. Whereas if you're reaching out from a place of emotional fulfillment, your cup is already filled up. This allows you to provide a lot more value in communication and be able to validate from a place of strength, and will have a much bigger impact on the potential future of the relationship moving forward. And this is massively impacted by the next metric, which is the detachment metric. So a lot of people fail to prepare for the worst case scenario. A lot of people will reach out to a partner who maybe needs space, has maybe gone a little bit quiet, or even has broken up with you. A lot of people reach out under the illusion that they're going to receive an immediate warm response. A lot of people get into their mind of like, I love them and I feel so much love and care for them. So I know that they're going to feel it when I reach out to them. And then when they reach out and their partner is still in a place of strong expectancy bias, which I speak about a lot on this channel. I'll leave a link to a video about that up above and in the description down below. But when there is pushback from a partner, people are often very unprepared for it. So when they expect a very warm response, they're completely taken aback and unprotected against silence or even pushback, rejection in that moment. Now, expectancy bias is common in every single relationship repair. I've seen expectancy bias in 100% of cases. But it's knowing how to navigate that expectancy bias, which is really important. So when you're looking at all of these metrics, it's really important to ask yourself, am I ready for a worst case scenario if I do reach out? Have I put my self-worth through a simulation test before I take action on this? Am I ready emotionally and with the communication tools and prepared for if my ex-partner says, I don't want to speak right now, or I don't want to meet up, or I still need space? So ask yourself this question. If I text them right now, if I call them right now, and they ignore me, or they block me, or they tell me that they've moved on, will it completely destroy me? Will it stop me from growing and making the changes? If the answer is yes, then it's important to not reach out, because it means that you're not ready yet. If this is going to stop you from making the changes that you want to change to become the person that you want to be, then now is not the right time to reach out. It means you need to re-solidify your changes in order to continue that growth. And this is a really important metric to track because it decouples your self-worth from the relationship. So you're only ever genuinely ready to reach out when your emotional stability is decoupled from their response. True self-sufficiency emotionally means that your self-worth cannot be built or broken by a response from your partner or your ex-partner. So this is why these emotional tools are really, really important. And this is massively impacted by the next metric, which is the nervous system metric. So a lot of people fall for this idea of no contact, where they think, if I just don't speak with my partner, then I will go through healing. Whatever the phrase is that people like to use, I will go through healing by not speaking with my partner. This illusion of isolation-based healing is exactly what I said, is an illusion, right? It's incredibly easy to feel completely healed, calm, and evolved, enlightened when you're sitting alone in a room, meditating or talking to a therapist. But this is unverified peace. And this may sound a little bit harsh, but it's the reality, the way that the mind works. By avoiding difficult situations, we can give ourselves a false sense of certainty that everything is always going to be okay, until we step out into a situation where that discomfort slaps us in the face a little bit. Asking yourself, does my heart still absolutely pound and I feel overwhelmed at the thought of seeing their name crop up on Instagram or on Facebook or anything like that? And this can be easily tested. Visualize their name flashing across your screen right now. Imagine hearing their voice. If your heart rate spikes, or your stomach drops, or you feel fight or flight panic mode, then your nervous system is still treating them like an active addiction or a threat. So there's nothing wrong with feeling this way. But if you're considering reaching out and your biology is still dysregulated, it's important to make sure that you're learning the right emotional tools to be able to regulate yourself having these conversations. The worst thing would be to reach out having not made the right changes in order to be able to lead the relationship in a very powerful way. You know, I've done a deeper dive video on this, understanding what it means to have the right emotional tools in order to emotionally lead the relationship to a very strong place is what is going to allow you to build a relationship with your partner, your ex-partner, give them confidence that you are the person that is able to cultivate this relationship into the right direction. And this is about learning the right tools and mindsets in order to do them. So, like I said, I'll leave you with that deeper dive video and I'll see you over there.